Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Serbian Corner. New episode today. Show where a couple of Serbians talk about the Nuggets. We're on the DNVR YouTube channel, DNVR Nuggets podcast feed. My name is Voja, coming from Lincoln, Nebraska via Belgrade, or the other way around. I don't know. And today with me, as always, Miroslav, hailing from Pančevo. What's up, man?
Hello from Pančevo. I pulled a bonus highland yesterday and twisted my ankle. It was a pretty bad
just when
one.
you started playing good, huh?
That's right. Just as I dropped to 240 pounds and started blowing away next to everybody.
To be in high school again for me.
That's right. So yeah, I'm aching a bit, and I really have to say I feel for our guys more now than I usually do because I'm aching as well. So I just remember I didn't have this kind of ankle sprain for like 5 or 10 years now. So yeah, it's not great, but my mouth is luckily still in function. So we'll
operational.
see.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
We said. I mean, what a freaking week! Like five games in seven nights. It's insane. I just want to remind everyone in the chat. I see our regulars from the Nuggets Serbia podcast too. Keep it in English for the just for to help us out with interactions and advertising and all that stuff, all that cool stuff, and just to have fun with English speaking people. So basically, what we do on the show is weekly recap of the Nuggets basketball, quick takeaways, main themes, disagreements, everything else. And this week we'll add like a preview for tomorrow's Philly game, so it's not only a recap show this week. We start off usually with our rakia shots, Serbian national drink, usually taken before dinner, so to make a toast. So this week is a segment. There'll be a quick headline, something that made a really strong impression for us, like quick and strong, like every rakia is. We're gonna start off with let's start off with some general stuff around the Nuggets. There's some interviews. We have a couple of 2 or 3 rakia shots, like, so it's always muddled with rakia. You never know.
It's late season. We need more shots.
Exactly. So we'll start with we'll talk about River stepping into the starting lineup and that possibility for the end, because then we'll get into more Nuggets play from this week. But I want to start us off with first off, like Pop getting the most wins in an NBA coach is really cool. Also for us because of his Serbian heritage, and he has an itch in his name and he's at the top of the coaches list. It's really cool because for me at least he was one of the most including players, but because he was a prominent head coach and a champion, he was basically our ambassador for basketball from that region. He didn't consider us soft or just a shooter or floppers or anything. He actually heralded that those 90s, the would-be 90s dream team for Yugoslavia and some of the great basketball players from our area, from the area and from the eras of Yugoslavian basketball. So that was always cool. What do you think? Like, is that cool for you as it is for me?
My heart belongs to Pop. Throughout my basketball fandom, I always felt that connection to him because he was always good friend with basketball coaches from former Yugoslavia, especially late Dusan Ivković, who was the national team coach for many years for Yugoslavia. And there is this cool story about Pop being a mentor to Žarko Paspalj, one great Yugoslav player that never got the right chance in the NBA. Žarko was staying at Pop's house for a full year that year when he was in San Antonio. Back then, Pop was just assistant coach. I think it was his last or second to last season before he became the head coach, what he is today. So I'm really, really glad that such a cool character, and Pop is a really great character on and off the court, and having a lot of laughs with journalists as well. And it's a strange kind of story with him and journalists because they're at the same time they love him and they're scared shit of him because there are situations when you just need to know what to ask him and what not to ask him. So it's just a great personality, and I would even argue that he's probably one of the most famous coaches out of all team sports, really. So It's a really, really
Yeah,
great name.
I mean, probably one of the, especially with Coach Pop, and with because of his full personality, he's not just a basketball player, which kind of shows. I mean, that picture with him hugging Dejounte Murray. I'm going to repeat myself for the people that watched this earlier today in Serbian, but in that picture with Dejounte Murray when he's hugging Pop, like you can see the love, basically because he gave a chance to Dejounte when no one else would. To that extent, like being basically a franchise point guard right now, and you can have tactics, you can have X's and O's all day long, but it's that also like the human side of it that makes a great coach, and that's why I always talk about also transfers to Malone and his comments about Pop, and basically when that's why Malone is such a good coach from that perspective as well, because of he had Pop basically as a mentor, like he is his role model for his careers. Obviously his dad too, but like Pop got him his first job, and like he was really not nice to him when he didn't have to. So like that's really cool, and that's why his legacy is so huge in just pro sports, pro basketball sports, and just in general sports. So that's pretty cool. That's the first, basically my like half a shot, I guess, and the other half is kind of gets into that like coaching and just like understanding of basketball that also Pop was proponing in San Antonio. Is that we had Dan Milojević was the assistant coach for Golden State Warriors that's working with Wiseman. He was one of the great undersized centers in Europe and Serbia, and he taught obviously like his Jokić is his best work basically. So Harrison Wind did on DNVR.com. He did interview with him, just a quick Q&A when they were in town about just how how Jokić was, how it was to train him, stuff that they were working on, and then paired that with the Sports Illustrated interview about just Jokić giving out his personal opinions about basketball and some stuff I like there. It just brings me to just to like given like an idea of how what Yugoslavian school of basketball is to like American viewers, is to understand that Jokić is basically the culmination. He's like the pinnacle of that philosophy of basketball. The thing is, like, he's not some like unique aberration of from that area of like, oh, this is how he is, and there's no there's not going to be anyone else or before or after. The thing is, like, Luka is very similar skill set, and he's from that school of basketball. The thing is, like, his skills were harnessed, by that philosophy. And Dan Milojević said that as much as he said that as much of like skill is one thing, but understanding the game is something that you want to develop. And that's one of those like we talk about Jokić ball. That's kind of what it is. Like just kind of give a different name. And Adam and the guys give it like a different name here with Jokić ball. It's basically understanding the game, not just how to do things on a court, but like why are you doing this on the court. And it's kind of funny sometimes, they ask Jokić, like, oh, how you did this and what did you think in that moment? Like, why did you do this? Or like, or how did you do that stuff? And he just says, oh, I just did it. Like, because it did it. And it sounds funny. And then you think he's just this savant genius that just comes up with this on the fly. The real thing is like he has talent and skill. The point is like he was taught from early on why he's doing these things and how to read the game. And I kind of talked to Brendan the other day about this. Is just I likened it to like literacy. Like when you read and write at a young age and you learn it well, you don't think about later in life, and you practice at it when you're younger, and you don't think about when you're 25 when you're signing your name, why you're signing V or like M or like N, like this is just how you do it, and this is it becomes an innate part of you, like it just becomes your nature. And then because Jokić has also like high IQ as naturally, and like skill in his hands and just hand-eye coordination, those like that foundation that the coaches in Serbia got to him, and then Dan was teaching him, was basically propped him up to like be this genius, to like take advantage of his IQ in this sphere of NBA, and then basically overcome his lack of athleticism because of it. So I think like that's what kind of people have to understand, that he's not just just always one in a million. He is because of how he was treated. Like if he was taught, maybe if he was in the AAU system here and it was just taught on results, and like the coaches would just be considered with wins and not to teach the players why should they do things on the court, and then how to do them. He might have been just a regular, like, oh, whatever center for like a D2 school or lower end mid-major D1 school, and then not end up in the NBA. The thing is, because you harness that with that philosophy of basketball, you harness his skills, he is what he is right now. The thing for me is that, like, the coaches have lost this thing of teaching the players. Like, they have a lack of understanding of how to teach because they're so preoccupied with the results. And it sucks because, like, we have, again, like, it's deteriorating even in Europe and in Balkans, like that side of how to, educate in basketball. But you have more of your role players that understand these things as well. Like, all of my friends, like, we grew up with the coach, and Ognjen Stakovic, there's an assistant on the team right now. We had the same coach, and that Ognjen has the same philosophy that he got from my coach, and then he transferred it to the Nuggets. It's that, again, why are you doing these things? Like, you have to understand why, and it doesn't matter like what kind of skill set you have. A limit based on your skills and like physical talents where you're going to get to, but you can understand the game of basketball. So all of my friends, because of that coach, we understand the game. We don't play it anymore, but we didn't have any plays in high school. We just read the game how it was. No matter how someone could shoot better, someone could shoot worse, or someone could dunk, someone couldn't, but everyone understood why we were doing these things on the court. And just that. I mean, I'm kind of being long here, but this is why you have to understand why Jokić is what he is and how he does these things. It's because of that's where it starts. It starts with because he was young and he was taught these things, and it's again like a second language. You start early, you figure it out, or literacy. You start early, figure out, make it a part of your DNA or your bones, your mind, and then you harness those skills later. You improve, you sharpen, but that's kind of that's why I think like it was important to hear from Dan, and he had that 1 point really good one, and then also Pop is one of those coaches as well. That's why it's not an accident. His role players are so low mistake prone. So that's, I mean, what do you think? Like, I've been talking a lot, but this is one of the things I'm really passionate about. So I really had to do this monologue today.
You really described the foundation nicely. That's the foundation of every player coming from Yugoslav basketball school. And then you get a couple of things extra for Jokić that made him such a great player. And Harrison did a really good job getting these things out of Dejan Milojević. First thing I liked is the fact that Milojević mentioned how much of a great competitor Jokić was from day one. And the biggest problem he had with Nikola is the fact that he didn't like those repetitive training routines with no actual target at that point, because you need to repeat some things to master them. And he was making kind of games inside those repetitive skills. How do you call them? Exercises and
drills, exercises,
drills. Yes, and I have to say this is the moment where it's really important for Nikola to come to Denver and not to some other franchise, because in the 7 seasons Nikola was playing for Denver, they were never trying to tank at any point of the season, and that's really important because you have those players who are winning basketball players like Nikola, and if they come to the bad situation like Bogdan Bogdanović did in Sacramento and like Bjelica did in Minnesota under Tibbs, so you have those bad teams where you don't have the opportunity to show how much of a winning player you are, and Nikola was in the right position. Here they were trying to win every game for all 7 seasons, and now they are bearing fruits of that. The second thing I really liked from that interview is the fact that Dan mentioned that the thing Nikola can still improve on is not any kind of physical skills, because he already have them all. It's the fact that he thinks that Nikola can even improve in decisions and reading the game live, on the court. So Dan actually thinks that Nikola could become even a bigger basketball savant, even a crazier kind of superpower on the philosophical superpower on the court. And I really like that that piece of it as
Yeah,
well.
I agree, and I agree there. Like I mean, everyone can improve always. Like no one's perfect, and that's that. I mean, that's the truth. But yeah, like again, this is all like a perfect encapsulation of again like why also why we get mad at some of these players on the Denver on like just in the NBA, but obviously because we watch Nuggets, we get mad at the Nuggets players because of you can see, and it's not their fault. You can see the influence of the again. I'm gonna use Brendan's quote for his mixtape culture. Like it was more interesting to have a flashy mixtape than a foundationally sound one. And it was funny watching. Like I remember, like I wanted to watch the Kings when Bogdan was on that team, and I just couldn't after like a few games I just stopped because it was so glaring. Like he would do these things that are small details, like you said, winning basketball plays, but it would just be a pebble in the ocean. Like nothing would come of it except he would stick out as basically not fitting and being bad because he's playing with the guys that are not used to that type of basketball, like pure basketball. And that's why that's why I think he didn't like fit in the Kings that well, because especially he was coming in from one of the best coaches ever in Fenerbahce, from Željko Obradović, and he learned. And that's the things, like he didn't know these things as well before. Like you always have to think about who's coaching, and that's why Dan is one of the best. That's why Golden State was savvy enough to bring him, because like not just for Wiseman, for everyone. Like that's for Kevin Looney especially. Like he's the one playing a lot, and not an accident that he was decent enough guarding Jokić. Like he had Dan to in this corner. Besides, like I've seen comments. Besides, like refs not swallowing the whistle, but we'll get to that. But just this is again like I wanted to like have a little bit more of a more of a emphasis on this interview, because again, like I loved what what Harrison asked him and how he asked him and what Dan said, because that's the important part. That if you take nothing away from this, it's that you know understanding of why you do something on the court, not how it comes later. Like we would have practices when the coach would stop the someone would do, like for example, Iverson was really big, right? He had the step, had that crossover when he had the ball all the way up, and then he would do, and kids try to mimic it, and then the coach goes, why are you doing this? Why do you think he does it? And he would make you think, like, why does Iverson do that? And then understand that, oh wow, like he's actually shifting balance from one leg to the other and making the defense fall out of place because the ball is so far out, but he never loses control, he never loses his balance, his angles and stuff like that. And then you learn, and then that crossover comes after you learn why you're doing it. And like again, like one of my pet peeves is seeing the guy step outside of the on the out of bounds line in the corner because they move the leg backwards to get momentum going forward. And that's one of those things, like again, like the coach would stop and be like, no, don't do that, because you think you're gaining advantage, but you actually are. You should be standing straight, moving your body forward without going backwards first. You're losing a step, you're losing your balance. You're not a triple threat anymore to pass, shoot, and dribble. And so those kind of little things is that it's basketball is easier when you get a good foundation, but then when you're not, like it can be really complicated, and then you hear all these details, you're like, oh my god, it's too much. But that's why Jokić makes it look so easy, because of the foundation, and then you add on top of his talent, and he's become the MVP and the best player in the world.
Yeah, and just one more detail that wasn't mentioned in this interview, because Dejan Milojević is too modest, just like Nikola, and that's the fact that Dejan Milojević was a master in the post. Back in his playing days, he was an undersized 5. He was 6'6", 6'7", and he absolutely dominated the EuroLeague competition for years and years. And he knows all the tricks in the bag there is. So you can thank him for Nikola's great footwork. That of course it was improved in Denver as well. But the foundation that he got from Dan for those three seasons is something that's immeasurable. So thank you, Dan, for what Nikola is today.
Yep. And we'll pivot into more of Nuggets basketball and stuff. I said like we're gonna have last Rakia shout out is going to be the river. This was like a bottle pretty much of Rakia that we had just now. It's Sunday. It's Sunday lunch.
It's been that kind of a week, Voja.
Yeah, pretty much. Like we needed that. So Rivers is a starter. Picking up that defensive slack. As because Barton got hurt, he stepped in the starting lineup. What do you think about Rivers in that role? And have you first? I mean, are you surprised that he's basically taking on Gary Harris role right now?
I'm really not, because I was looking at his numbers for months now, to be honest, and he was always great with the starters. And the eye test for the last couple of weeks just popped out, and especially in those 3 games, he was starting instead of Barton. It was against Sacramento, the first game against Warriors, and
Yeah,
no,
I think so.
both games against Warriors actually. So
Yeah, you're right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you sort all 5-man lineups with more than 20 minutes together, Nuggets have put out this season, but net
Well, also
rating.
finished. Sorry, I also finished against the Pelicans. Right, he hurt
Yeah,
himself
that's
against
right.
Pelicans, and
That's
then
right.
yeah, the whole week. Yeah, yeah.
That's right. So it was a full week practically. So Austin Rivers is a part of 4 out of 5 best 5-man lineups the Denver Nuggets have, and of course, most of them are together with the starters. In one of the lineups, he's there instead of Barton. In the other one, he's there instead of Jeff. And in one of them, J. Mike is there for Jeff, and he's there for Barton or whatever. There is also this great bench lineup. He was there with Faku and Brin and J. Mike and Boogie as well. So he was pretty good with the bench as well. But really, that was my tweet a couple of days ago. You can see right now, if you remember what the end of Gary Harris' career in Denver was. So add to that more confidence on his shots and his dribbles towards the basket, and add a much better handle that for some reason Gary just lost after several seasons of great playing. This is what Rivers right now is. I would of course love if he was like 2 inches longer than he is, but that it is what it is. He is the best.
It's always an inch short.
Yeah, always with the Nuggets. And I remember Matt Moore was saying for years how the Nuggets cannot go all the way because their backcourt of Jamal and Gary is too small, and he was right. It really is. It's a problem. You need some bigger guards there, and also Adam Mares always say that he thinks that the final form of Denver Nuggets will probably feature a defensive guy at the shooting guard, of course, preferably a 3-and-D guy at the shooting guard, not D without the 3 or vice versa. So yeah,
what do you think? Why do you agree? Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree, especially when Porter and Jamal eventually come back to the lineup. You will have 3 great offensive players, one of them, the total incredible offensive hub. You really need 2 really great guards, great defenders next to them. You already have Gordon, and if you put a guy who is a lockdown defender, the point of attack defender that you can put on the best or second best perimeter player of the opposition, then you have a good chance of rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I like the Rivers. Again, I'm seeing comments, just basically not trusting him in offense and stuff. I agree there too. Is like you don't want to give him too much to do, and I think
fifth option definitely.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah, like not giving him too much responsibility, too much to do. I'm pretty, yeah, like and Adam says in the comments, Murray, MPJ, and AG, Jokić is good length, so that's 100% offense you need and 70% of the defense. So like you're basically filling in that role again. Like I think, which is kind of a weird development. I mean, that was my comment a few weeks in a row. Just Austin being, transforming to like a defensive specialist is something like I had no idea that he wanted to do or like had it in him. Like he obviously 2-way guy, blah blah, but like he was always more, I'm a gunner type. And just understanding that he, and also liking that he does that now, and how he locked up Steph Curry pretty much for the most of the game until Steph had an outburst in the third. But take away those 18 points that he wasn't guarding him most of the time. Like that's good job on that. And yeah, I mean there's not much to add. Like that type of player, I don't know who that's gonna be, but if it's Rivers gonna be for the future or just this postseason. I think Monte is much better with him. When Rivers takes on a more challenging guard, Monte can hold his own a little bit at least. He knows how to read the help side, and he's smart enough player to understand reading the position of defenders. So I agree there. We'll see if if Reed evolves into that eventually, or we sign Rivers, or we develop someone else on the next draft or something. But very very interesting to think about, especially with Barton being in and out, and it's kind of weird. Like he comes back, you lose couple, like it's I don't want to get into the Barton can of worms right now. Like this is not we're not going to talk about this on this show for now. For we'll save that for later, maybe playoff previews or something. But definitely something to think about. Like I think I was I can get him. I would want him in the starting lineup just to see.
As long as the Nuggets are alive and well to compete in the playoffs, there is no need to talk about players being cut out of the rotation.
Adam is saying he's hyper
players.
intrigued by Josh Hart. I mean, yes, man, sign me up if Josh Hart. If we can get Josh Hart, I don't know when the cap will spike. That's one other thing. Like if we can get that weird, obviously not Durant like on the Warriors type of thing, but if Josh Hart can be taken for some money, some Barton money, for example, like that's very interesting.
Stop speaking out loud my thoughts.
Yeah, pretty much. Sorry.
Yeah, pretty much. Will Barton is expiring contract next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to your take foul. We have half an hour left. Like, basically, this is the worst thing in basketball, and we hate it. So, we're going to talk about something that really bugged us this week, and this is, for me at least, this was Looney guarding Jokić in the narrative that he really did a great job on him, on his defense in that second game, because we saw the first game, a little bit different story. What do you think? Like, is it really good defense? Is it refs? Is it combination of fatigue? Like, what do you think?
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but what happened at the end of that second Warriors game was the result of not only fatigue, but also of some things the referees allowed to Looney and other big guys against Joker in the final stretch. I agree that his turnovers looked like he was out of gas, but also there was significant contact during each of those passes that went away as non-calls. Also, you made a screenshot of a giant bloody scratch on Nikola's neck.
Yeah.
And that's a new insane level of allowed hacking of the league's MVPs. So, yeah, I hated that. And I was really hoping we're going to get past things like that. But you know what? When playoffs come and the referees start swallowing their whistles a bit more.
Yeah, we know who's going to be ready.
That's right.
It's going to be Jokić's going to get used to it. Yeah, that was. I mean, that game was, for me, that was atrocious. Like that's why I was so upset about it. I don't care that we lost. I mean, I've cared to a point, but not to a point that's going to ruin my night. That would ruin my night because of just the two hands on the back, gashing. Like 4 minutes left. There's basically not foul on Jokić for the entire time. And yes, he was fatigued, so he couldn't get past even that physicality. But it was just, I mean, and then saying like, oh, he did a great job. Like only four fouls in Jokić is absurd. Like every play you see a replay of the good defense, and it's two hands in the back first on the contact. That enough like will take over your energy, and then afterwards, bumping and like gashing and everything. So, which brings us, I mean, this is just to get our frustrations out. Just on that thing of basically what Randall was saying this year, like, oh, this smaller guy, the refs are like, oh, you're stronger, you're not going to get a foul. So that's kind of bull to me. But the other Euro take foul is one of those like more basketball related, and you call this one the problems against long guys. We've kind of seen it now trending. Like the few losses that we had recently were against teams that had athletic wings. That you had the Celtics pretty much had a decent lineup. Then you had the OKC. Then you had the not excluding Golden State as back to back, but then you had Toronto as like three of the most recent losses. You kind of have that situation.
Yeah, also Pelicans and Clippers. It's
the
story all this time.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, what do you think? Is that something to worry about more, or is it adjustable when you have more minutes? When you add more minutes with Jokić, what's your verdict there?
Yeah, that's just going back to what Matt Moore was saying about the small guard lineup that Nuggets have for years now. And when you get to the guy when the point guard on the other side is 6'6" or higher, or in crazy case against the Toronto where Scotty Barnes was playing basically a point guard at 6'9", with the other guys that are even taller than him. That was just a problem. They had 24 shots more than the Nuggets on that game, so they didn't really have to do anything spectacular to win that game. They just needed to convert shots at like 10% less accuracy than the Nuggets, and that's enough when you have 24 more shots than the other team. I was actually quite surprised how few of the shots the Nuggets had in that game in total, and that was the result, of course, of a big number of turnovers as well. So yeah, I don't want to lose too much time on this, but it is what it is. When everybody is healthy, it's a different situation. But right now, yeah, you need to have Jokić playing more minutes in fourth quarter. We spoke about it like 6 weeks ago. We had a show specifically on that, how those limited minutes of Jokić in fourth quarter is not a great thing, especially in close games, because you need your anchor on defense, especially because he is the one that will not let that many offensive boards going away. So I think that's one thing they could use. They could play him less minutes in third quarter, and then, as Adam already said, the fourth quarter is also slower, so you have more breaks, more chances to catch your breath. So I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like we're basically gearing up for the playoffs, and it's kind of weird because again you had then you get the other side of the coin where you had third quarter that Steph had, and so it's like, oh well, you should have kept maybe you should have kept Jokić all the third to pair Steph, but then it's kind of weird, like because of just how other coaches adjust. And the problem against long guys, like, I think it's a concern, but I also think, especially against Toronto Clippers, like OKC, like these are all like really good coaches, and it's not only because I saw a comment that how does Denver not have Bucks and Heat problems with the same big bodies and stuff. I just don't think they play the same type of defense on Jokić. Like they have Adebayo and Giannis and and Portis or Lopez when he was healthy, so they kind of trust, I think, more individual guys to do it. With Toronto, it's kind of, they don't have really a choice. Like they have to do what they did. And it was interesting what zone, when the zone that they play with, like three guys basically collapsing, but none actually guarding Jokić. So it's like they're there, but not quick enough to like catch up with the guards. I think
and
Gordon
long
is
enough,
one. Yeah, long enough. Like I think Gordon is one solution. Like with the first game against Toronto over there, he was there, so that's more of a help on defensive rebounding. And I think also in that in those like kind of transition seals inside, that was that was the plays, the quick post ups that Jeff Green can do sometimes, what Gordon really does. And I think he had, I think he was against Toronto, I think he had a bunch of those, and they couldn't let him do that stuff. And then on the other hand, because Jokić is so big, he was trying yesterday in the fourth to get the shot off like that, to like get the quick position before the defense settles. And then what they do is just Scotty Barnes just stands in front of him and takes a charge. And the refs are going to call it because, again, he's bigger. And so that if you had Gordon, that's more of a similar size, that they're not, they might call one, but they're not going to call all of the flops. And then also on the offensive end, like you have him at basically at a dunker spot. Jeff Green is not. It's regular season. We talked about him. It's not. It's not the same situation. Like Gordon brings you much more energy, even though he's been playing badly in the last month. I still think he helps because you have that threat out there. So that's, I think, something to look over. I think when they're healthy and when they have more Jokić minutes, more stabilized like that, I think he'll be better. Because again, he played little minutes yesterday, like that. So that's kind of what my like just basically conclusion on the big guys is. Do you have anything else to add, or are we gonna move on?
No, let's move on.
Let's move on. I've seen some comments like Reed at 2 is basically like that's also like we see the matchups, like I mean just the positioning, like he's a two-way guy, he knows how to play a 2 guard, and you just throw him in as a 3 or a 4, like kind of it's suddenly he's a crappy guy. That's again one of the problems with the bench we talked about over the year, over the season, just people fitting in places. So and then Adam said, like, for Bucks, like, they openly criticized their coach for the defense against Jokić. Yeah, again, like, it's what they choose to how to play, and we have the three coaches they have the bodies and are willing to strategize differently and think of different ways to guard Yoke. So, okay, let's go to Boric. I'm hungry. This is a nice juicy pastry dish that comes either with cheese, spinach, or meat. It's well known because Nicola used to eat it a lot. And this is going to be our meaty segment, something big. Even though we talked a lot about the rest of the show, but this is also just like what juicy. And you prepared some stuff about peak Jokić, and we talk about the Philly game to wrap up the show. And this is the again, this is everything's interesting. Like Rakia is quick and strong and good. Like your take fouls is Serbians get angry, so we talk a lot when we get angry, and then Boric is just we eat. So everything's pretty much going to be juicy, like in this show. So
let's just sit down and have a really juicy, really beautiful piece of peak Jokić Boric pie. So he had a great week overall. If you combine all 5 games, even though they went 3-2, he was still pretty elite on average on these 5 games. But the peak Jokić was actually those 2 games, back-to-back games against the Pelicans, against the Warriors, where he tallied 78 points, 27 rebounds, 24 assists, 5 blocks on 77% true shooting in 24 hours versus those teams.
Yeah.
What the fudge? If you remove the blocks, and you need to remove them to be inclusive of the other legendary NBA players, the only guys in the history of the NBA who hit all of those points, rebounds, and assists numbers in the span of 2 games were James Harden in 2016 and, of course, Wilt Chamberlain in 1968. What Nikola was able to do within one Earth's rotation around itself should not be taken for granted. We are watching something special right now. I want to make a little retrospect of things that happened before this pinnacle of his and what happened in these last 2 seasons. So, if we combine these 2 last MVP level seasons over those 132 regular season games, he averaged 26.2, 12.2 rebounds, 8.2 assists, and the lists of players to record 26, 12, and 8 in 2 season span, Nikola Jokić and nobody else in history. Of course, I'm cheating a bit because if you move it to 7, then you will get some Wilt seasons, and if you reduce the rebounds a bit, you will get some other guys. But, 26, 12, and 8, only Nikola Jokić. Over those 132 regular season games, his box plus minus is 12.7, the best ever for a 2-season span. Second best ever, LeBron James in 2009 and 2010.
Okay, so explain to me the box plus minus. Is this box score plus minus?
No, a box plus minus is a pretty complex per minute stat. So it's not something that adds up over time. It just gives you the average value of your playing on the court, of the things you can find in the box score on offense and on defense, and combine that, and you get the per minute number of that. So when you get a 2-season span of something like that, we're talking real greatness. Because
of course.
The reason I like box plus minus more than other advanced stats is the fact that when you look at the list of top guys on that list, there are no outliers. For instance, if you look at the PER, you will get Boban Marjanović, because it's also a per minute stat, but it doesn't show up for it's a bit different stat. You will get some guys that are not top level players there, but in box plus minus, it's just Jokić, LeBron, Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, just the greats like that. So, as I said, Nikola's box plus minus for 2 seasons, 12.7. Second best, LeBron, 2009, 2010, 12.5. And some guy named Michael Jordan, third with 12.4 in 88 and 89. By the way, back then he was scoring like 37 points on 55% from the field and averaging like 8 rebounds and 8 assists. So those were some pretty insane seasons from Jordan. Still number 3. Sorry, Michael. You have your Charlotte Hornets to play with, to not to be sad about this fact. Okay, let's dig a bit deeper. So over those 132 regular season games, he's had 20 triple doubles with the field goal percentage over 60%. So very efficient triple doubles. So 20 for Nikola. The rest of the league, 44. So let that sink in. So 44 for everybody and 20 for Nikola. This is how insane he is. Okay, over those same 132 regular season games, Nikola has had 91 games with at least +1 in plus-minus stat. So he was a net positive in 91 games, and he's the second in the whole league for that. Why is this important? Because the first guy on this list is Mikal Bridges from Phoenix Suns, and his Phoenix Suns had 103 wins in this span, and the Nuggets only had 84 wins in this span. So you can see what kind of a positive guy Nikola was throughout these 2 seasons. And what about his 2 seasons long efficiency? Over those 132 games, Nikola's field goal percentage is almost 57%, 56.9, and that ranks 12th in the league among players that have played in at least 2,600 minutes, basically 20 minutes per game. He has hit 181 three-pointers in that span, and out of all of those guys with a higher percentage from field goals than him, the most three-pointers made is DeAndre Ayton with 9. So Nikola 181 and Ayton with 9. Practically, you can round that to 0, to be honest. In 130 games, 9 assists, 9 threes is just a statistical error. And finally, let's get really basic here. Nikola has had the second most points, the second most rebounds, and the 4th most assists in the whole league in the last 2 seasons.
Jeez, was it Giannis first? Or whose points? Whose points?
To be honest, I don't even remember. It's probably Giannis, but I'm not completely sure.
Which again is like he has a 2, Finals MVP, 2 MVPs, and a championship. So
yeah, he also played a lot of games. He played more games than most guys. So this is why
that's insane. That's nuts. Like he's. Again, like we talked about some, why in the beginning of the show, like some of the background and the foundation, and then this is just harnessing that power and like that understanding of basketball to like a level that we haven't seen. It's again, we obviously he's our guy, so like we're biased and everything, but at some point, like you're going past bias. This is just realistically insane. It's not like, oh, we're championing a random, like, me with Monte, like I love Monte and subjectively and everything. So like you obviously I think he's better than a lot of guys that might not be better than. But this Jokić is like, you can be subjective as much as you want. Again, objectivity it might even increase. Like we might, as subjective as we are, we might even want to downplay him a little bit so we don't seem too subjective. And then someone comes from the outside and goes like, oh yeah, he's a top 10 all time. Like it's not even, he will be top 10 all time. And you're like, wow, that's, we don't even try to say it because the first sentence that we say like that is like, oh, you're Serbian. Like you're not objective.
No, we are not saying it when we are sober. We are not saying it.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're like, because there's not an argument. Again, this is kind of hard then it's hard to argue even with people outside of, when you easiest is the Twitter arguments that you can go into is you can't, whatever argument you put out, like everyone else can just be like, oh, you're just biased because you're from your country. Like same thing with Jokić stuff. That's why I don't argue about them at all. Just it's a no-win situation. You let someone from America argue that he's, Adam is going to champion him better than we are because he can tell to Kevin O'Connor and like Zach Lowe and people like, hey, this is really good. If we said it would be like, oh, he's just your guy. Like, again, it's kind of similar. Like when Bill Simmons talks about Boston, like everyone's kind of like, rolls his eyes and becomes skeptical of the takes because that's his team. So,
by the way, yeah. I love how much Bill Simmons is pumping up Jokić.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So thank you, Bill. I know you're watching. Thank you.
Well, he's like a number one, sports podcast. Like it's really cool then to like have Jokić always plastered on there. And then Adam was like, this week was just, it was his like victory lap about Jokić and, Kevin O'Connor and Zach Lowe. And
he was great on the low post and Seth Partnow's show. I don't remember the name, But what Kevin, KOC, and Adam
Yeah.
did on the Void, that was just beautiful. It's a great show. Don't miss it. Don't miss it, please.
And so, as far as since we're on Borek, JD was asking us to translate for American viewers what means sending someone for a Borek in Serbian, like that kind of expression, and we kind of forgot. I mean, honestly, again, we're like lacking here. We forgot about that expression completely.
It's a basketball expression.
It's a basketball term. Like, yeah, we use it. So, it's faking someone out to a point where they like it. That crossover when a guy like moves past you, or for Jokić especially, and that's kind of mostly what it is. Like in the post, you pump fake and someone flies by, like bites on the pump fake and just disappears out of your like defensive of the defensive area, and then the player lays it up, and so because like the defensive player completely missed and whiffed, you kind of tell him, hey, like go pick me up a Borek and come back. And so that's kind of a funny anecdote. And then Jokić does a lot of those, like the other was it they're mentioning the Kings that like behind the back on the Aaron Fox that a few years ago or like last season, that was sending someone for Borek when they want to steal the ball and you move it away, they whiff and go 3 steps past you and you're like, oh, see ya, go to the bakery, get me a Borek with some yogurt, and and that's what because the comment was he'll send Embiid for Borek tomorrow because Embiid will be hyped up to play, and so like he'll whiff on a lot of those.
Was it Robert Covington falling down after Nikola sent him for Borek before he sent that assist to the corner on the like game 6 versus Portland last year?
Yeah, he fell down. That was one example. It was an example last year when Mitchell Robinson, obviously when he wants to block and he like just whiffs. Gobert as well when he does the little like Hakeem shakes and Kevin McHale moves down low. Rob Williams, Time Lord, biting on a pump fake and just flying by, and Jokić. That's one example. One example is like saying someone Borek, and the other one when it's like that when Jokić does like someone bites on a block and just flies by. It's like how's the weather up there is another question that you go like
that's right.
kind of for taunting. So those are kind of the 2 things that good recommend from the comment section too. That. So we mentioned Embiid. So let's move on to our Philly preview and finish up with that. We said the title of the show is there can only be one for Highlander fans. You know what that means? Like where it's going to be pretty much. I mean, maybe unfairly, but the game probably MVP race is going to be decided tomorrow. Unless they pretty much play to an even and they both play shitty. Like, I guess that's the only, maybe like, Harden plays better than both. And so they kind of, they tabled that discussion for the MVP for the rest of the week. So what do you think?
Well, the reason why this game is so important, to be honest, completely is the fact that we are getting mixed signals about Jamal, and we had Harrison reporting that Jamal is no longer making his warm-ups before the games. That sounds concerning. And these last 2 losses as well is emphasizing the importance of the game against Philly as well. The game is going to be on the ESPN, and it will be a chance for many fans nationwide to see the Nuggets for the first time this season, because I believe ESPN will pump up this game a lot before it begins.
Well, they should. I mean, they should.
Of course. Yeah.
So first thing is, of course, the narrative about the MVP race between Jokić and Embiid. The Sixers will probably be favored as a home team, although they will be on the back-to-back traveling from Orlando. It would be super funny if they choose to play their best players versus the Magic and rest against the Nuggets, like they did with Harden against Miami a week ago. But for the sake of this being a meaningful segment, let's pretend they will play everybody except for the injured Danny Green, who will most definitely not be playing. Okay, so let's take a look at 76ers stats since James Harden started playing for them on February 25th. They're now 5-2 when he plays. Actually, when he plays and he doesn't play because he missed that one game against Miami. They won against Timberwolves, the Knicks twice, Cavs, and the Bulls, so more or less middle of the pack strength of schedule. And they lost that game against the Heat. And again, they lost in embarrassing fashion against the Nets when Harden and Embiid combined for 8 from 34 from the field. Superstars. In this span, Embiid was putting to be honest. 35 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 assists. Pretty fucking amazing. But on 42, 21, 85 shooting splits. So if he's shooting 42% and 20% for 3, how come he gets to those big point average? Well, he shoots 16 free throws per game, so they add up quickly.
16. I mean, his
16
season
per
average is
game.
11, almost 12.
Yeah.
Man,
No,
16. That's a lot.
It's getting crazy right now.
Yeah.
Harden was also putting 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 11 assists on 46, 44, 90, which is pretty good shooting splits. And he had only 8 free throw attempts per game, so only one more than Nikola Jokić in this span of games.
7 to 16. Wow.
That's right. Also, Tyrese Maxey, he's a third wheel over there in a pretty good wheel. He is averaging 19, 3, and 3 on insane 53, 57, 80 shooting. Tyrese Maxey is having a season, Voja. He is having a season. They have been the 6th offense and 12th defense in this span of 7 games. And they've had only the 20th fastest pace. So they're not running a lot. I mean, it's not a big difference. It's like a 3 possession difference to the number 1 offense in pace. But it's a noticeable thing. They're not running too fast. Okay, so what about the Nuggets? Let's see, like last 15 games, those games when Bryn Forbes and Boogie was playing. And they've had in these last 15 games the 8th net rating. So not great, not terrible, at 5.2, mostly because a lot of games they won were resolved in the last few minutes. They've actually went, let me think, 11-4 in those 15 games. So it's a better record than what the net rating suggests. If you remember, when we started this show in January, they were a 500 team in clutch games, but now they're in the respectable 18-13 in those games. Actually, they've been 18-11 just 2 days ago, but what you gonna do? Yeah. Okay, so let's see the Nuggets stats for the last 15 games. Jokić 26.5, 14 and 8.5 on 56. Now 24 for 3 and 77 shooting, 7 free throws per game. After that, a big drop off, of course. Gordon 14, 6 and 2.5 assists. 49, 26, 95. Also really bad shooting for 3. Only 3 free throws per game. That's also a thing to look at. He's not drawing a lot of shooting fouls. Monte is at 14, 3 and 4.5, but he's been red hot. 55, 47, 89 shooting from Monte. Barton 12, 5 and 3. Jeff and Bones have 11 points per game. Forbes has 10. Cousin has 10. J-Mike has 9. And those numbers sound really nice because they add up really quickly. But the problem here is only Forbes and J-Mike play in all of those 15 games. So this is why the sum of the average points is actually much higher than what they actually made. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. In current available rosters, the Sixers are a stronger group of players. But everything will change when and if we get our full roster. And
I mean, we're not. Let's
really
not even go. Like, let's just assume. Let's have everyone healthy that is on this team this year. Like, I'm not even hypothetical, because hypothetical is only the finals, and that's way ahead of it. So for tomorrow, just a few questions for you, like to start off, and then we get to the chats. I saw some funny questions. First, Gordon on Harden. We had that question from the Serbian show. I wanted to translate over here. What do you think? If he's healthy, do you put him on Harden or Tobias Harris?
Oh, 100% Harden. Because
and then if so let's think, like, if we go defensively, and we talked about Barton, not if he maybe not plays or something, you go Rivers, Monte, then you have Gordon, Jeff, and Jokić. Then I think like Harden maybe, and then like you have Rivers on Maxey and Tobias, and I guess you have Embiid. Jeff. I don't know who's their fifth.
Oh man, that's a good question. Who was their fifth recently?
Maxey, Harden, Embiid, Tobias. Yeah, I mean, Danny Green used to be, but like he's hurt also. I don't know if
Yes,
it's Korkmaz or someone.
Monte will have to guard somebody.
Yeah,
Maybe.
someone if it's not like if they're not going big, like something like that. That'd be interesting to see if because Harden's not playing fast, so like this should be fine for Gordon. And then I think Jeff can match up with Tobias also fine
Sure.
enough.
Sure.
Maxi's a problem, I think, but we saw Rivers play good, against him against Steph Curry, so like that'd be good again. But if Barton's there instead of Rivers, then there might be an issue. Then Monte might have to take Maxi, and that's one of those Monte weak. I think weaknesses that we've seen that is it's not really great. And then who's ever the fifth Barton, I don't know. That might be an issue. That matchup might be an issue. Is again with Philly's going to be wired up. Like they have to recover from the Brooklyn loss because that was awful. Like even I don't know, even if they win and Embiid's not that dominant and Jokić is pulling everyone to the clutch and it's Harden that's finishing the game instead of Embiid in the clutch, which is again very far fetched, but still you still might see Jokić coming out as even the moral victory in that situation. But that's just my the most optimistic outcome. I think just Nuggets have to win. It doesn't matter if Embiid has a better game per his his stats. I just think they have to win. Jokić has to win. Another question is, do you think Jokić can be in foul trouble and how quickly, if he is?
That's the biggest question of them all, really, because you can ask this question in the vice versa manner as well. Will Embiid be in foul trouble as well? Because Jokić is really good at extracting those non-shooting fouls.
Yeah, I guess that's true. If he baits him for those, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think Nikola needs to be really, 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 really focused for this game, and I'm not sure he will be looking at this game as the biggest game of the season like we do at this point, because his MVP would probably be the best thing that will happen this season to this Nugget team. But I don't know, man. It's really hard to see. One thing I think Nikola is smarter than most guys while defending guys that are baiting for fouls. So it's just that he needs to keep his cool and not get drawn into some kind of vendetta kind of fouls because the referee didn't call for a foul against him, when he's on the offense. So it's a big question. It's the biggest question, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm honest, which kind of sucks. I mean, imagine just if they actually called it the proper way, we can have a great matchup, and we're here talking about who's going to be in foul trouble. Is Jokić going to be because it's 16 free throws? Those fouls have to come from somewhere. You can't put Boogie in the starting lineup to
it's been
get those fouls.
27 months without a game between the two greatest bigs in the league. 27 months since they met the last time. It was back in 2010s. It wasn't even 2020s.
No, that's true.
December 2019. So let's hope the referees will not take the center stage this time, and let's go for a great game.
Although it was
I want both of them scoring 40. I don't.
No, hell no. I don't like Embiid, man. I don't like his game. I don't that style of just bully. Not bully ball, just bull in a china shop kind of thing. I like finesse, man. I don't. It was I watched Philly. I know they're interesting, hard, and everything. I just hate. I couldn't watch that Nets game. I couldn't believe I was secretly rooting for the Nets in that game. I hate them too. They're terrible.
Possibly.
And I'm watching and I'm laughing that they're not giving him fouls and he's falling all over himself for free throws. I'm that's what the problem is, because the worst thing is he's not capable of playing really well. It's just that he's used to getting fouls. So Harden, that's the easiest way I can score. Why wouldn't I take advantage of it? And that's what's annoying. And again, we talk about the preview, and there's so many things we could have been talking about. And the worst thing we could say is and the first thing we have to say is, well, if Jokić gets in foul trouble, it's pretty much over. Then it's a 30-point game, and you don't even care. Again, watching through box scores, not through actual game. You don't care what the flow of the game was or what decided it. It's gonna be like the Lakers in the bubble against Nuggets. Jokić gets out with 2 fouls early, and the game's pretty much done. You can't, and it's a gentleman's sweep, and that's that. So I hope we can avoid that. I hope the Embiid will keep in mind, like, there have been more outcries because of Embiid's free throws, and it's getting out of hand, especially with like some of the stuff from Brooklyn, like when he just falls backwards, like even he's facing away from the hoop, he falls down and he gets a foul, a shooting foul, that kind of stuff. So hopefully they'll keep in mind because it's such an important game. But again, like I wouldn't put it past like Jokić fouling out first time in like how many years.
Yeah, we had an interesting comment here from Nana asking to put Facu on Harden and also Embiid.
No,
And
that's
they think about, okay, of course, not on Embiid, but on Harden, that's an interesting thing. Harden is a huge guy. He's like
I don't want
6'5",
Facu on
and
him.
he's like 260.
Yeah.
But
He just
thing
turns
about
around.
him-
He just turns his hip around and just goes like, and he knows how to play pick and roll. He'll get shoulder to shoulder with Embiid. Facu's gonna be helpless. Like then you have a switch, and
yeah,
I'd rather not.
yeah, only maybe
He can guard Maxi or something, but like not even he. I think he'll kill him, but I don't think it's a good matchup for Facu.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that's what it was. So what do you think overall? We talked a lot. What some of the talking points. What do you think will happen?
It will be Nuggets win, and it will be a Munder. That's my prediction. We really
Damn.
need this.
Yeah,
It will be a Munder. I think Harden will shoot like 2 of 19 from the field, and Embiid will have 35 points with 25 free throws, and he will be like 4 out of 20 from the field, and the Nuggets will steal the win.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, I'm kind of more on leaning on the Nuggets based on what our like situation was so far. Like every time they lose a couple of games, they kind of bounce back. Like there might be a third loss or something. But if there's this bad, like against Toronto, they might come out. And we heard Gordon being wired up against the Warriors. I think he was wired, or Austin Rivers was, and Gordon was next to him, and he said, "Oh, Philly lost. Like we like that." And it was they know, like even though Jokić might not care, like I think his teammates care, which is also very cool to see, like that they're the ones keeping track of the MVP race for his guy.
Of course they are.
So I think they might be if they're come out kind of how they came out their one game against Utah this year or last year in the in the national television slot, and how they came against Phoenix in the beginning of the year, and that those kind of important games. They might, we're due for a good shooting game, I think. So, let's go Nuggets. They're also second lineups doesn't give me any confidence. I think our second lineup might actually get a lead in there. So,
let's go Nuggets.
Yeah, let's go Nuggets. Be the Nuggets team.